So let's talk about why people get stuck in these relationships, really, because that's the issue. And let me tell you, you ain't getting stuck in these relationships just because of the narcissistic person's charm. As I've said repeatedly, the challenge raised by narcissistic relationships, it's not the issue of getting us getting into them. It's the issue of us getting stuck in them. The getting out is what is hard, especially after stuff like trauma bonding kicks in, as well as the enabling by people who keep telling you stuff like, give it a chance, or I'm sure they don't mean it when they say that or do that, and then the confusion of all of it, and especially if this is a repeat of what things were like, for example, in a narcissistic family system, it's hard. And if it feels unsafe to leave, then it's even more difficult. But this cycle starts even earlier. So let's break this down a little bit. It starts first with the idea that I am bad for seeing this new person as bad. In essence, you are judging yourself for seeing red flags. That's often where this process starts. People will feel like, oh, maybe I'm judgmental. Maybe I'm the overly critical one. Maybe I'm the problem. When you may spot behavior, especially early on, that is gaslighting or toxic or manipulative. Remember, this uncomfortable, unhealthy behavior is inevitably embedded within this larger context of these good things or charming things or attractive things that they're doing. They may do something that feels considerate. You may have fun with them. This person may make you laugh. There may be days that they do nice things for you. And remember, in the early days of a relationship, it's not as though you have a history with them. So then, when they do a bad thing, it's still embedded in this larger context of doing some nice things. And especially if you grew up with this kind of backing and forthing between some good things and a lot of bad things, and frankly, even if you didn't, you do believe when you notice those bad things that I'm being too demanding, maybe my standards are too high, maybe I'm asking too much, no wonder I'm single, I ask for too much, or that you're a bad person for seeing their behavior as manipulative or gaslighting or as invalidation or betrayal. And you may also have other people say to you, oh, come on now, nobody's perfect, but this isn't about perfect. If you're in a relationship with someone who, for example, who acts like a victim every time things don't go their way, this is about that, or it's about someone who may tell you lies when it works for them. Or it may be that you're in a relationship with a person who's dismissive of what matters to you. But hey, they bought you dinner and paid for all of your friends to go away for a birthday weekend. So that erases the slate, right? And that you're a bad person for seeing them as bad because they did that nice thing. And this is a tiny but important shift that ends up happening in the relationship, because now that part of you, now that bad you's in the house. And you may consider bad you to be demanding you, unrealistic expectation having you, needy you. And so you may then make more allowances for their bad behavior and over appreciate the good stuff they do. But one day you can't not see these patterns. The relationship becomes increasingly uncomfortable. The emotional abuse keeps mounting up. You find yourself more and more hypervigilant, walking on eggshells. You feel like you can't be yourself. You start staying quiet because you don't want to make them mad. But hey, you're the one who's bad too, right? You're the one who has unrealistic standards. You're the one with unrealistic expectations. And maybe that's why the relationship is so bad, right? It's all your fault. So that same way you thought you were a problem in the beginning of the relationship for noticing some of those red flags, for thinking that meant you had unrealistic standards, now you think you're just a bad person and a problem, full stop. And that it's your identity. And the narcissistic person is saying it more in the relationship, saying things to you like, you aren't affectionate enough, you aren't nice enough, you ask for too much, you're greedy, you're selfish, you aren't you're just not enough. You're a problem. Well, now, even if you do start to see these behaviors in the relationship as bad, well, that belief system has seeped into you, and now you view yourself as bad too, as you're a problem too. So you may not have feel like you have grounds to push back or leave, because maybe you stay even because you feel like, oh, I don't have a strong argument to leave this. I suck. They suck. This all sucks. And then you feel stuck. And you may not see it. And that's the real problem. Betrayal blindness is real. That idea of not seeing what is happening in the relationship happens not because you are in denial, not because you are dumb, not because you're a codependent, but because there is a cost to seeing the bad things happening in the relationship. At first, you may not really understand what is happening, sure, but the real issue becomes that there is a cost to seeing it. You may feel that you can't stay in it, or that if you see the bad things happening, that means ending it to you. And then you may forestall something that matters to you, like getting married or having children, or maybe you already have children or live together, or you have your own wounds and fears about being abandoned or being alone. There is a sort of protective process around not fully encoding the small and big betrayals. And it sort of does have a big payoff. If it means you can stay. If you don't see it, you can stay. And if you stay, then you don't have to endure the anxiety, the fear, the disruption to life and to the trauma bond that can fill us with panic. Now, it's not like that bad stuff that you were betrayal blind to doesn't enter your psyche. It does. And all that betrayal sort of piles up in a big dysfunctional pile of ick in your brain. And you start feeling things like anxious and physically ill, disconnected, numb, dysregulated. You don't feel like yourself. So the not seeing is not intentional, it's protective. And you stay because those reasons, those betrayals, the reasons to leave, kind of get sort of cordoned off in your brain. You don't sort of see them. So you don't do anything. You remain stuck in the relationship, but one day you see it. And this is the moment where perhaps the betrayal happens right in front of you, or someone else is there and sees it too, or someone else tells you, or someone else shows you the evidence, or the evidence shows up on an iCloud account and you can't not see it, or they treat a friend of yours really rudely, or they start poking at things in your life that feel like sacred no-fly zones, like a beloved family member or your children or a belief you hold. Whatever it is, they go there. And then, betrayal blindness be damned, you see it. And that moment to get there, it can take months, it can take years, it can take decades. And some of that relates actually to what you learn about narcissism. Some of it relates to the supports you have access to, like friends or family or therapy or having other resources in your life. But one day you do see it. Well, the discomfort doesn't go away then. You see it, and then you feel shame. Lots and lots and lots of shame. Asking yourself and feeling, why did I wait so long? Why didn't I leave sooner? I knew years ago that this sucked, and now it's public, or it's really humiliating, or people knew for a while, or I knew for a while, and I didn't do anything. So once again, instead of turning the lens where it belongs, that this other person behaved badly and hurtfully, no. We then focus on the shame that we waited so long to do anything or even see it. We talk about ourselves as codependents and as part of the problem or as foolish. We may not talk about it at all because we feel humiliated. We may feel numb and then overwhelmed with anger and emotion. And people looking at us may see this strong emotion and judge us harshly too. And above all else, you feel shame, but the fact is, you've been feeling shame for a while. These relationships only work if you are willing to carry the burden of all of the shame in the relationship. If you are willing to carry their projected shame and the shame that grows for you as you stay longer and longer in these relationships, and even when you are betrayal blind, there's a sort of knowing in your body. So that shame quietly builds up. Takes a minute for our minds to catch up. And so even when we start to feel unstuck in these relationships, the shame can still keep us in that mindset that we had from the early days when we felt we were bad people for spying these red flags, these toxic patterns. But now we think of ourselves as foolish. We didn't see it. We're the ones who are needy. Some people still manage to get out at this point. Sometimes the narcissistic person leaves the relationship at this point. And a lot of people still remain stuck at this point. Strangely, we almost need to be bad in our minds for these relationships to work. And work, I think, is a bad term. I guess maybe I mean for these relationships to move forward, to sustain. And I've talked about this before in a video I did on debasement. You can go check that out. That basically we have to eat our own shit for these relationships to work. The narcissistic person can't be bad. Their own psyche doesn't tolerate that framework for themselves, at least not consciously. So we carry that projected burden. But the real challenge is that all of this seeps into our identity. And for a long time, sometimes a lifetime, we walk around and are always quick to take the blame. We know if we do that, then conflicts can be averted, trains can keep running on time, and that is what keeps things from escalating. We view ourselves as the problem, as the people who are just too damaged to make relationships work. And we put ourselves in a real sort of bind, in a can't-win situation. Because in the beginning of the relationship, we felt we were too quick to judge. And at the end, we felt that we were too slow in seeing it all, and we were foolish for staying. And we are full of shame on both ends of the relationship. The stuckness in these relationships is tough to break for a lot of reasons. Because it may not feel safe to leave, because of family court, because of finances, because of lack of support. But it's also tough to break for that reason, that we have to integrate this belief that we are bad because of our shame. These relationships are, in essence, it can almost feel like we're being programmed to become supply, to devalue ourselves, and to put another person's needs first all the time. And to keep accepting the narcissistic person's shame until it becomes our own. So many survivors blame themselves for letting it go on for too long and looking back and recognizing that the unhealthy cycles were present from the beginning. It contributes to all of the blame and shame. But you can and have to put the spotlight where it belongs. A person who is in a relationship with you emotionally mistreated you, and that's the problem. And parts of you, like your empathy, and even the pressure from the world to see the good in people, or give people a chance, or the benefit of the doubt, all of that combines to make it more likely that we get stuck in very unhealthy relationships. But it's their toxic and manipulative behavior that's the actual issue, not your badness. We have this unrealistic ideal of what the perfect survivor looks like. The perfect survivor is someone who doesn't leave too soon, but also who doesn't stay in the relationship too long. As though there is this perfect inflection point when you get just enough data, so you have just enough proof to show the world, so you can leave without people questioning you, but that you don't leave too soon, so you aren't viewed as judgmental, but you don't stay too long, so you don't look foolish. And of course, none of that accounts for processes like trauma bonding and manipulation, any of it. We aren't robots that crunch data and make personal decisions on the basis of algorithms. We are emotional. We are human beings. We want connection. We need connection. And we make allowances in the name of love. And the fact is, most of us were never taught what a healthy relationship looks like. But to see how a story begins with you feeling bad about seeing the red flags, ultimately ending up in a place of feeling shame about not seeing the red flags soon enough, all of that gives you a sense of how treacherous these relationships really are. and brings up that constant reminder that I always highlight that you can't win. But understanding is a really important step to winning. Hope that helps, and thanks.